meeting whilst we wait for other participants to join in as well. Yes, right. So it's good you raised your hand. Right, I'm going to unmute you, and afterwards, kindly rechange the name. So the name is now Samsung SMX200. So kindly change it to your name, okay? So you can now unmute yourself and speak. Your hand is up now. Yeah, please go ahead and speak. Your hand is up. Go ahead and speak. Kindly unmute yourself and go ahead, please. Oh, Samsung SMX200. I can see your hand up. Kindly unmute yourself and speak, please. Okay. Unmute. I have it.
Hello.
Hello, Mom. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. So please, after submission, after submission, please do well
fine.
to
okay.
rechange the name, right?
I will adjust it. I will adjust that once I finish speaking.
Thank you very much. You can go ahead and talk, please.
Okay. Yes, I'm also super ready for today's training. Looking forward to today's topic, neurodiversity, and looking forward to learning more and putting the awareness into the world out there. So that's my taking for today. And I really enjoyed yesterday's training, and I found myself to be active and to know where I stand and to hold this training to take it seriously and to be committed in it. And at the same time, consistency is really important. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mom. I'm highly appreciative for sharing that nugget with us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Motola said yesterday was welcoming, and today I would like to soak in everything about neurodiversity and the learning difference. That is from Motola. Motola, thank you very much for this wonderful feedback. And yeah, we're still waiting for others to join. And so at this moment, we're just sharing our experience from yesterday, and then also looking forward to experience a lot from Madam Esther, who is already with us today. And so please again, if you want to share your experience with us with regards to how the training went yesterday and what you're looking out for in today's session, you might feel free to share with us. Just raise your hand using the icon, and I'm going to call you just so you can unmute yourself and share with us what you have for today. All right. Just as we wait for our friends to join in as well. You can also share your comments on the chat, in the chat room, and I'm going to read that as well. Okay. So Namiti says, neurodiversity is an area of interest. I would love to explore this fully. All right, Namiti, I will also love to explore with you as well. Yeah, we're all learning today and we're all connected to thrive. All right, thank you very much, Namiti. Great. So for me, yeah, you can unmute yourself and talk. So for me.
All right. Good day, everyone. It's
good evening, Tufumi. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
How is Nigeria?
Oh, Nigeria is beautiful. Thank God. God is helping us through it all.
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yesterday's session was a great one. The instructors they did a lot of job to let us understand deeply all that ADO is all about, and it was a great one. And I also I had the opportunity to join the webinar, the live session that we had concerning neurodiversity the other time, and then I look forward to learning much more today as regards that, and gain much more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tufumi. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining yesterday. In fact, it was such a wonderful time meeting all of you from different walks of life and different countries. It was fantastic meeting all of you. And so we are still warming the house. Waiting for other participants to also join in as well. So feel free to share with us your experience from yesterday's section, and then also feel free to tell us how you anticipate today's session to be, and also you can share with us your take. Yeah, so you can just unmute yourself and then talk by showing your hand up, and I'll let you share your comments with us. Okay. Okay, Bridget says hello. All greetings. Greetings to you as well. And thank you for joining today's session. Yes. And please again, let me just put this through. It is very important that you fill up the survey that is in the platform, because it is very mandatory. It is part of your attendance. All right. Yeah, Mr. Daniel, your hand is up. You can unmute yourself and share with us your.
Thank you. Please let me. Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel. I am from Zimbabwe, but today I'm joining you from Lesotho. Yesterday's session was very, very interesting, in the sense that I think we got to learn more about the organization and the fellowship as well. So, commitment is actually very fundamental if you want to reap the benefits of this training program. And with regards to today's session, I look forward to learn. As I was researching about the topic, I got some very interesting nuggets. So I'm actually looking forward to learn. My notebook is ready, and my ears are ready, and my brain is also ready. Thank you. Back to you, David.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daniel. We appreciate you for joining yesterday, and we appreciate you for coming alive today. All right, sure. So if you just joined us, we're just sharing what we learned from yesterday's model and what we look out for in today's session as well. Just so if you want to share yours with us, you can just show by hand and I will meet you. Then you can also share your reflection from yesterday's model with us. All right, just as we wait for other advocates to also sign in to today's session. And just a quick reminder, if you haven't filled the survey, please do what to do so, because that is also your attendance, and that gives us a clear indication you are attending the class. All right, thank you very much. Madam Dorcas, your hand is up. Yes, you can unmute yourself and share with us. How are you doing?
Well,
hello, Madam
good
Dorcas.
evening,
How are you doing?
everyone. Yeah,
Good
good
evening,
evening,
ma'am.
everyone. Yeah, thank you for having me. Actually, I felt I was your debating yesterday, or very attentive. At some point, while filling the feedback form, I saw somewhere the phrase for the meeting. I was like, did I miss anything yesterday? Was there a time where a phrase was mentioned, but I just couldn't fathom it? Please help me about that. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much, Madam Dorcas. Right. So a lot was discussed yesterday, and in fact, we really had fun. And so if there's anything that you missed along the line, kindly do well to text me privately, and I would be glad to share with you whatever you missed and then help you catch up. All right. Yeah. So thank you very much for your time, and God bless you. Right. So just as before we kickstart, I just want to let you understand that we have the founder and CEO of Africa Dyslexia Organization also with us, and she's watching us from the background. I don't know if she wants to say something to you, but hey, she's smiling. She says no. All right, thank you. Yeah, she just came to give you the support. She loves seeing her advocates. She loves hearing from the her advocates. So she's at the background, yeah, watching everything that goes on. Right. Great. Hi. But I want to just say hi to us. We won't hear your voice, your sweet voice. Just say hi.
Oh, David, don't worry. Well, it's another day, and welcome to the session. I'm so excited for all our trainers who are going to be engaging with you. And I know Miss Esther is ready and pumped up to just give you all that she knows. And so I would just say, please Get your pen, pencil, and notepads and make your notes. I mean, there's the recording, but when you are present, you should be making notes and putting it together. I understand someone asked about the passphrase. Yes, there is a passphrase that will be given for every training that you do. And that comes at the very end of the training, because some people can join at the first start and then they fall off. No, you didn't attend the training. And so you need to be here to finish the content, and you're okay, then the passphrase is given to you so that when you are filling the form, you're able to put it in. If you put in the wrong thing, we assume that you were not at the training, even though you may have been. I would also encourage all of you that when you attend the training, try and get your evidence that you were there. Mm? Get your evidence from, say, the beginning and the last end. You know why? Some of the evidence I mentioned, if let's say a trainer is training, the last slide, it means you are there. If you have a picture with you in or your name in it side by side, it means you are there. If you just send a picture of the beginning one and without the end, we might think like, oh, you should just join, and then he fell off. And so get your own evidences, because we've seen it many times when it's getting to graduation time. People are like, but I was there. Go and watch the video. We don't want to go there. Okay, so get all in it. But at the end of the day, I'm just so appreciative to all of you for your interest and just to know. And if not anything, at the end of the day, I know that this message will not sit just with you. You're going to share it with many people, and it's going to transform somebody's life. So I wish you all the best for today, and we are grateful.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Rosa. Thank you very much as well. Right. So we ready to kickstart. And so I will kindly want to introduce to you the speaker for today. And just as you all know from your calendar, she is a wonderful personality. I mean, you would love to hear from her. Today's model is on neurodiversity and learning differences. And the one to do so is no other person than a wonderful personality. She is Madam Esther Muchiri. Wamai. Yes. If I got the name wrong, kindly do so to help me pronounce it right at the end of the session. All right, so she is a leading dyslexia and literacy advocate, advancing neurodiversity and inclusive education across Kenya and Africa. She is a founder and CEO of Bloom Dyslexia Center and Bloom Dyslexia Africa. The organization focuses on early identification, evidence-based structural literacy, and inclusive system of learners with learning differences. She serves on the Kenya's Disability Interagency Coordinating Advisory Committee, contributing to national policy and disability inclusion and equitable education. A specialist, assessor, and Otto Grillingham certified tutor. Wow. She brings deep expertise in assessment, interventions, and system strengthening. In 2025, she convened the landmark Dyslexia Raising Africa Conference, amplifying live experiences and policy dialogue across the region. She is no other person than Madame Esther Muchiri. Wamai. Madam, nice to have you.
Thank you very much, David. I'm very humbled by that profile. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Right. So please, your audience are ready for you, Mom.
Thank you. Yeah, so David, as I wait for you to share the screen, I want to take this opportunity to say hi to our audience, our advocates, and just to congratulate you for this bold move in enlisting to be part of this phenomenal movement and standing to be counted as an advocate who will use the knowledge that you will gain from this fellowship to be an advocate, to be a voice, and to influence change. I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate my sister, Madam Lady Rosa, and Dyslexia Organization, Africa Dyslexia Organization in general, the team who are the great brains behind this brilliant initiative. And I'm glad that she's not only reaching out to her fellow Ghanaians, but she has gone out to ensure that everybody in the region has these brilliant and very, very privileged opportunities. So thank you, sis. It's always a pleasure. You are always a trailblazer, and we are glad to be part of this initiative. Thank you. So I am very excited to be your facilitator, your trainer for this evening. And as David has rightly put it, our module 2 is understanding neurodiversity and learning differences. And this is a topic that is very, very close to my heart. So I am looking forward to a very, very interactive session. I know we have Q&A at the end, so please pack all those questions, and at the end, I believe that we shall have a very, very interactive sessions of questions, reflections, and any thoughts that you may have regarding this topic. So thank you very much. Let's be attentive, and I think we can start. So next slide, David. Yes, great. So I believe when you signed up for this fellowship, you all had your expectations for the entire the entire fellowship program, but again, even module by module. And therefore, maybe I would take just a few minutes of your time to hear what your expectations for this training is. So if you could raise up your hand, and David, you will help me to identify those whose hands are up. If we could get like 3 people just to hear what the expectations are, I believe they shall be representing everybody who is with us today. So let's just have a small discussion of what your expectations are from this training.
All right, so you can feel free to put it in the chat room, and I'll humbly read that out. And also, you can also put up your hand using the icon. The icon is down there as part of the button below. You can go to reaction and you see raised hand. All right, so yeah, please go ahead. Olu Watusin. Yeah, please go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I am Olu Watusin from Nigeria. I'm so excited to be here, and my expectation is to be filled with every knowledge I need to rightly advocate for everyone with dyslexia, to not just be a layman when it comes to dyslexia, but to have every knowledge. When I mean every knowledge, like a knowledge-full package, moving around the street, advocating for dyslexia. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Do you have any other hand up or any expectation on the chat, David?
Not at the moment, please.
No, I see a hand up. We
Okay,
have
yeah.
2 hands up.
Same. All right. So, for me, you can unmute yourself and.
All right, so good day, Ma. Thank you very much. My expectation for today's module is to gain. I have basic knowledge concerning learning differences, but I look forward to like learning from the professionals, those that really understand the in-depth of the various learning differences that exist amidst we humans, and I look forward to really, really understanding it deeply. So that's my expectation today. Thank you, Ma.
Right. Thank you very much. Namiti, you can also unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. So today I am looking at having more insight into the concept of neurodiversity. I have heard the term, I've seen some sites online, but I've never really taken an in-depth study. So today I'm looking at having more insight into what it really means and probably how it affects learning so that I can support learners more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oyenkeru, Oyenrunke, yes, Oyenrunke in the chat room is saying that my expectation is to, I'm coming, says my expectation is to understand neurodiversity and what it is all about. And also, Timi Dayo is also saying that I hope to learn the core basics of neurodiversity and how it affects our day-to-day lives. And also, yeah, I think these are the comments we have in the chat room. Omo Bola, we don't want to say something, you can unmute yourself and say something. Yeah. Your hand is up.
Yeah. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Mom.
Yes. My expectations for today's training is I've actually been looking forward to this particular topic on neurodiversity, and my expectations are to learn more, to achieve more, and to tell it out to the community, to the society around me, that dyslexia is just a learning difference, because so many people out there, through lack of awareness, they just believe that they stigmatize children or people that are dyslexia, giving them names as in, you don't know anything, especially in school settings. It also happens in church, in churches where we have Sunday school. You understand, where, you teach children and maybe they can't read the Bible properly, but not knowing that it's actually a problem. I mean, it's not a problem, it's just a learning difference. So I actually look forward to knowing more about this, and to also be to voice out there that it's just a learning difference. It's not the people with dyslexia should not be stigmatized. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. All right, so we just say the last two, and then we'll hand over the platform to Madam Esther. All right, so Bridget is saying that my expectation is to understand what neurodiversity is all about, how different learners learn, and how I can be of value to them. That is from Esther in the chat room. And Dorcas is also saying that my expectation includes getting more knowledge about neurodiversity and creating more awareness in my immediate environment, or as the case may be. All right. So, Madam Esther, you have the platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, for moderating that session. And thank you very much, our advocates, for those expectations. I can see we are all very, very expectant. And it's my prayer that this session will be able to help you achieve all those expectations, learn and apply what you're going to learn today, so that you can create, or you can influence, a more accommodative and a more inclusive ecosystem, not only for children, but even adults who are neurodiverse. Thank you very much. So we can move to the next session. The next slide, David. Great. So having heard what your expectations are, we have learning outcomes for this session. They are not exhaustive, they're just illustrative. I believe we will even learn more beyond what we have listed here. And so by the end of this course, you should be able to define neurodiversity, which is very, very important, and also understand what neurodiversity is and what it is not, because we have a lot of misconception about what neurodiversity is. So it's important that by the end of this session, we'll all be able to clearly define what neurodiversity is and also dispel any myths or bust any myths or misconception or misinformation about what neurodiversity is not. And the second outcome is that we shall describe neurodiversity in the African social and education context, very, very important. We shall also be looking at the where dyslexia fits in the neurodiversity framework. And finally, we shall analyze the risks of trend-driven and overgeneralized language. Very, very important. Next. Great. So we are going to look at what neurodiversity is. And as our first learning outcome stated, we shall be looking at what neurodiversity is, unpacking neurodiversity, what it is and what it is not. And so the first concept of neurodiversity has got to do with people's brains. So, and neuro, if maybe we could first unpack that name. If you look at that word, it's a word that is composed of two words, neuro and diversity. Neuro, when we talk about neuro, we are addressing the brain. So neurological. So brain-based issues are neuro issues, and therefore we are and then the word diversity, we know it's about variations, we know it's about differences. So when we bring the two words together, we are so neuro being a prefix that is coming before the word diversity. So we are looking at the idea that people's brain work in different ways. People's brain works in different ways. So when you look at a brain, there's no homogeneous brain. Our brains do not look alike in terms of structure and in terms of function. And so the differences that come up in people's brain are a natural part of being human. So just like we do not have the same size of feet, we do not have the same size of hands, we do not have the same color complexion, that is the same way with our brains. Though we cannot see the brain, of course, is a hidden organ, but when it comes to the structure and the function of the brain, no two brains look alike. As a matter of fact, even twins, identical twins, they have variations when it comes to the brain function and the brain structure. And that is what we are calling neurodiversity. And it's also important to know that the differences in how the brain works is a natural part of being human. And it's therefore not a defect to be fixed. And I think that is, and we'll see that as we proceed or as we progress with our session today, that those are some of the myths that we need to dispel, that if somebody's brain works differently, then they are perceived not to fit in the normal mode that the society expects one to fit in. So neurodiversity recognizes that variations in how we think, learn, communicate, and process the world are very, very normal. And I believe maybe for those of us who are already working with neurodivergent children or adults, you have already noted that they think differently, they learn differently, they communicate differently, and they also process the world, and therefore, the way they think, the way they learn, and the way they process should be perceived as normal, because we do not have any single normal brain. As I'm saying, we have variations of the brain. So there's no one single brain that has already been singled out as a normal brain. And so when again we are looking at neurodiversity, there are two terms that we look at. And the first term is neurotypical. So when you talk about neurotypical, the misconception out there is that the neurotypical people, quote unquote, and please just mark this, I'm saying quote unquote, the neurotypical people are the people we want to classify as what the society expects. And what the society expects has already been classified as normal. But when we say that, then what are we saying? That the opposite of neurotypical, which is neurodivergent, may be an abnormal brain, which is not the case. And therefore, we bring in now the term neurodivergent, and we are saying these are people whose brain works differently from the way the society expects. So in your day-to-day, you hear these two terms quite often. The neurotypicals, those are the people whose brains work in the way the society expects, and the neurodivergent are people whose brains work differently. Next. It's important that we ask ourselves, what's the origin of the term neurodiversity? In my practice, most people tell me that this is a very new term. We just started hearing it recently. Some have not even heard about it, or some have seen it and they don't pay much attention to it. But apparently, it is not a very new term. As you can see, it was coined in 1990 by a sociologist called Judy Singer. And this term, according to the sociologist Judy Singer, the term was to promote acceptance, inclusion, and the strengths that neurological differences offer. Because for the longest time, people who process or who learn or who think or who perform outside what the society has already constructed to be the norm have been viewed differently. They have been stigmatized, and I think one of our advocates said that, and they have been seen to be less. But the term neurodiversity is trying to, or it aims to change that narrative, because there's a narrative already that has been constructed around people who are neurodivergent, whose brains do not work or function according to societal norms or expectations. And therefore, this term is aimed at changing that, and therefore promoting acceptance, and therefore it lay the ground for advocacy, for supportive environments, rather than focusing on curing conditions. Because in our definition of neurodiversity, we said neurodiversity is not a defect. It is not something to be fixed. It's not a disease to be cured. And all we need to do is to create systems, to create an ecosystem that will allow these people to thrive regardless of the differences or because of the differences that they have. And therefore, instead of viewing neurodivergent conditions like autism, dyslexia, ADHD, dysgraphia, and we shall look at all those conditions that fall under neurodiversity. So instead of viewing them as conditions that need to be fixed, neurodiversity sees them as variations that, if supported with the right environment, with the right support system, they have something to contribute to society. They have something to contribute to humanity, and whatever it is that they contribute can be richer. It is more diverse, and therefore, just like biodiversity enriches the ecosystem, according to the National Autistic Society, so is neurodiversity. And in fact, at the workplace, I'm loving that there's now a movement or a trend that has come in among corporates, and especially in the Western world, where now neurodiversity is being seen as a strength to be embraced, and they are very, very intentional on recruiting and onboarding neurodivergent people into the organizations, into their teams, because the diversity that they bring, the richness that they bring in how they perceive things, in how they work, it has been reported, and there's even a lot of research that has been done surrounding that, that they are contributing to productivity and profitability of these organizations. And so I know organizations like Microsoft that I have the privilege to work with, they have been very, very intentional on bringing on board neurodivergent people and appreciating the strengths that they bring to the organization. So maybe just a summary is that we are saying neurodiversity was coined in 1920 by sociologist Judy Singer. So you can see this is a concept that has been around for the last 35 years. And I'm glad that it is taking traction, and more people are, as more and more awareness is being raised, people are paying attention. And we believe that with such initiatives, and when we create such cohorts of advocates, you continue perpetuating the work that has already been done, so that more and more people can hear about neurodiversity and be able to support. And that's the only way we are going to reduce the stigma and ensure that neurodivergent people are supported. And that's how now acceptance and inclusion comes in. And it's also good that as we're looking at neurodiversity, let's look at it from a strength-based perspective, because in most cases, we've looked at it from a deficit-based perspective, and that's how we reinforce or perpetuate stigma around people with with neurodiversity. And so again, as I had said, once as we talk more about neurodiversity and help people understand, that's how we help create supportive environments or ecosystem that focuses on accommodating persons who are neurodivergent so that they can achieve their maximum potential. Next. Yeah, so as we're looking at neurodiversity, we will be looking at the key aspects, and I'm happy because this came up from one of the participants who said they will also want to understand the key aspects of neurodiversity, and we shall be looking at these key aspects, and it's more of just emphasizing what I have already said. So the first aspect is natural variation. And this is where we are saying neurodiversity acknowledges that all brains function uniquely with no single correct way. And that's the emphasis, no single correct way. Unfortunately, we are also not blind to the fact that there is what the society has already constructed as the correct way. And therefore, this is where this program comes in very, very handy, because we are trying to challenge norms that have already been constructed. We are trying to challenge stereotypes that have already been constructed. We are trying to challenge misconception. We are challenging prejudices that have already been constructed, that there is a correct way how a brain should function. So if we are to change that, then it calls for a lot of advocacy to help people appreciate the variations of or the diversity of brain function. And you'll find that in most cases, why is the brain functioning differently? It is because, again, the structure of the brain could be different. We know when it comes to learning differences, for instance, dyslexia, and I don't want to delve into this deeply because I know there's my colleague who will be handling dyslexia, and I don't want to veer off, and I don't want to preempt her presentation. I know I could be tempted to do that, but I want to stick to the topic of today. But just to mention that we maybe just to take you briefly through the brain basics, that we know the brain has two hemispheres, the left and the right. Then the brain has a network of neurons or neural pathways, and these pathways are the ones that communicate. There are signals in the brain that communicate when the brain is receiving information. So whether the child is reading, whether the child is writing, whether the child is speaking, all the functions of a human brain are controlled by the brain. And you know, when it comes to, for instance, dyslexia, the brain neural pathways is where we usually have something we call a glitch, a miswiring. So there's a differentiation in how the brain has been structured that brings about the difference in the functions of the brain, reading, language acquisition, writing being one of them. And therefore, that's why you will find a child in a class who is not reading like everybody else has already been viewed as one whose brain is functioning incorrectly, which is not the case. So the case is, the thing is, the brain could be different, but it's not incorrect. So it is important that we note that. So the next key aspect is neurodivergence. And we are saying this refers to the neurological differences in the brain, just like I have explained. So the autistic people, people with ADHD, people with dyslexia, with dyspraxia, Tourette syndrome, they have neurological differences, but that does not make them less. That does not make them incapable. But actually, when you're looking at the definition of what a disability is, because let's also appreciate that these conditions will in one way or another inhibit somebody from achieving a function like reading or learning like their peers. But what you're saying is, if the accommodations are given, if the right support are given, they will still be able to achieve. They may not achieve at the rate of everybody else. They may not achieve at the pace of everybody else. But if we remove the barriers that are causing them not to achieve, because their brain will not learn or function at the normal pace like everybody else without removing the barriers, then we look at it as a neurological difference. Then we see, how do these differences manifest? What barriers will impede these people from achieving their maximum potential? So then the other one is neurotypical. We had already talked about that, and we are saying this one describes the brain function in ways considered typical or standard. And you can see we are putting that quote unquote because we are saying there is no single correct way of how the brain should perform. So let's not maybe perpetuate the narrative that the typical people have a normal brain. No, that's not the case. Then the other key aspect of neurodiversity is social justice movement. And this is what we are now trying to achieve through this program, that it aims to reduce stigma. And I think that also came up with one of our participants. How do we eradicate the stigma that has been created around people with who are neurodiverse, either in our churches? She's talked about Sunday school, and I'm a witness to that. I also do a lot of capacity building for churches, for Sunday school teachers, to ensure that the children are not only discriminated, because the children are not only discriminated in school. You find that even church schools where the teachers don't have this knowledge, the workplaces, even the older people also suffer this kind of stigma. So when we look at the social justice movement, so we are aiming to reduce stigma, we promote inclusion, and challenge societal norms that disadvantage neurodivergent individuals. That's also a very, very key, important aspect. And I believe this can be achieved through this kind of initiative. So when we build a movement of advocates who will be able to educate people and, as I say, dispel all the myths that come with the neurodiversity, we'll be able to create a more enabling and accepting and inclusive society. So I had mentioned this, that another aspect of neurodiversity is strengths-based approach. So let's focus on unique perspectives, creativity, and specialized skills that neurodivergent people bring. Because as I said, more often than not, neurodivergent people are viewed from a deficit-based lens or lenses. but it is our work to bring out their unique perspectives, their creativity. We know that they come with very exceptional strengths. It may not be all of them, but we know that most of them are highly creative. They are in terms of arts, design, drawing, music, sports, and we've seen all these people. So as we are talking about neurodiversity, let's also bring out this, because it helps change perceptions that they are not less, but they are capable of doing much more. Then finally, the other aspect is accommodations. So we need to look at how do we modify the environment, because the biggest barrier to neurodiversity is, or rather the biggest hindrance to neurodiversity thriving is the barriers that we have that have been erected for them. And this could be systemic barriers, they could be physical barriers, they could be attitudinal barriers, or any barrier that will hinder them from thriving or accessing the support they need to thrive. And we can only do so through advocacy. And therefore, when we are advocating, let's look at how do we modify the environments, right from the workplace to the schools, so that these environments are more accessible. They recognize that challenges often stem from environment, not from the individual themselves or the inherent differences that they have. So barrier-free environment to help neurodivergent people succeed. Yes, so as we're looking at neurodiversity, it is very important that we bring it closer home. We are Africa, and so we are Africans, and therefore, how do we bring this closer home so that it doesn't look like that foreign concept that maybe we are trying to advance? And so it is important that we look at Africa, the context we are in Africa, and we look at the social context, and later on we'll also look at the education context. So when we look at the social context, we're going to be looking at various aspects, and the first one you're going to look at is awareness and understanding. So where are we as Africa as far as neurodiversity is concerned? And I think we just have to, this is the sad reality, and we have to be true to ourselves that in Africa, the awareness level is still very, very low. I come from Nairobi, Kenya, and I can tell you, when I speak to my sister Rosalind, when I speak to my all other sister colleagues in this space of neurodiversity and dyslexia, you will think that we all come from the same country, because the narrative is the same. We are fighting very low awareness, and that is why you find that now as organizations in our own different spaces, and again, joint spaces, we are coming together and asking ourselves, how do we raise the awareness? Because once people are informed, we say information is power. When people are informed, when people have the right information, that's the only time we are able to make meaningful change. And also, it's not just about even low awareness. Yes, the awareness may not be there, but again, I keep emphasizing that we have a lot of misconception. I don't know in your respective countries, but in my country, when it comes to matters neurodiversity or differences, you will hear a lot of myths about it. Facts, and we have facts and myths, but we have more myths that maybe the family did something and that's why it happened to this individual. Like where I come from, my community, there's you will hear narratives like maybe the dowry, because we pay dowries to the bride. So if it was not paid and a family get a child who is neurodivergent, so all those and misconceptions. And until we raise awareness and we educate our people and give them the right information, that is the only way we are going to make a difference. So that's the context that in continent, Africa. So we still have very limited understanding of neurodivergent conditions. And so these are interpreted differently depending on the context where people are coming from. In our schools, we are always challenging the teachers who have labeled children who are neurodivergent, either dyslexic, as lazy, as stubborn, that they are not applying themselves, they are ill-behaved, they all manner of labels. So, but we've realized once now we hold capacity building sessions with the teachers and we explain these issues. And I think what complicates this issue, let's also appreciate that neurodivergent conditions like dyslexia are invisible challenges that you do not see with your eyes. And in most cases, these are brilliant, intelligent people. So that disconnect or discrepancy between a child or a person who looks brilliant, smart, yet they are struggling in reading, they are struggling in writing, their academic achievement is not at par with the peers. So that discrepancy is what brings a lot of confusion. And until now, we raise the awareness that we have hidden issues, we have hidden learning differences, and this is how they manifest. So the child is not being lazy, the child is not being stubborn. Our children will continue suffering under the hands of educators who do not know what is happening with these children. So the next context that we find ourselves in Africa is that, and maybe this is on a positive note, is that now we have emerging advocacy groups. And here I felt I need to give credit to our organization, Africa Dyslexia Organization, that is actively working to change the narrative. And how are they doing that? They are doing that by promoting awareness, acceptance, and respect for neurological differences. And we all know the work that Africa Dyslexia Organization is doing and many other organizations across Africa. So I think that's a positive note because you realize that almost now every country in Africa has these advocacy groups that are trying to change the narrative and rewriting the narrative of neurodiversity. For instance, our conference last year, our theme was rewriting neurodiversity, and we are from stigma to strength, and that is what we are all aiming for. And I believe even from this cohort, at the end of your program, you shall also join the movement. Yes, so academic and community collaboration, that's also a very, very important, that we need to create collaborations between academia, these advocacy groups, platforms like conferences that will create cross-continental dialogue among educators, policymakers, and families. We bring the whole ecosystem together so that we can have a dialogue, a conversation that will help us rewrite the narrative of neurodiversity. Next, David. Yeah, so now we can focus on the education context. And I know this is an area I know most of us are passionate about, especially maybe those that are coming from the education background. And so the first context we need to look at is inclusion and policy challenges. And I know this again these are challenges that we are all facing across board, regardless of which country we are coming from in the African continent. And so what maybe contributes to some of these challenges? And the first challenge is the persistent medical model, the medical or the deficit framework or model. And so you'll find that much of the education policy and practice in Africa are still using this medical model. And unfortunately, what the medical model does is that it looks at people who have neurological differences as people who needs to be fixed. So they are the problem. So if it's the learners, It's the learners that need to be fixed. But that is not the case. What the neurodivergent people have no deficits that need to be fixed, and I had said that earlier. You find that we'll keep repeating some of these concepts. And therefore, if we continue looking at the learners as needing fixing, then we miss the ball, we miss the point. But if we change that and look at it from what we call the social model, where we are looking at the environment as the barrier, as the hindrance, and try to adapt the environment so that we remove those barriers that I talked about, whether they are physical barriers, whether they are systemic barriers, we remove attitudinal barriers, we remove those barriers and ensure that we are modifying the environment and making adaptations to the either physical environment, to the curriculum, then we'll be able to address the diverse needs of the different learners who we have in our classrooms. And therefore, it is important to notice that the medical model limits true inclusion for the neurodiverse learners. And the opposite of, as I've said, the opposite of the medical model is the social model. And maybe as part of your homework, you can look at all those models that look at addresses neurodiversity. We have the medical model, we have the social model, we have the charity model, and you can see how each model contributes to either enabling neurodiverse people to thrive or hindering them from thriving. Next, David. Yeah, so the other aspect we are looking at within the education context is the gap between policy and lived experience. This is very, very common, and a lot of research has focused on this area and trying to see how do we bridge the gap between policy and lived experience. And so what you realize that, of course, policies inform laws or legislations, and you will find that most of our laws will promise inclusive education. They will talk about practical barriers like uniform, so they address practical barriers, but you find what is happening in our class, what are the lived experiences in our schools, in our classrooms, is that while we have laws that will promise inclusive education, that is not always the case when you come to the ground, that you'll find that learners are still being taught uniformly, as if they have the same, we've talked about the brain variations. And so we lack support like differentiation of the curriculum. We lack support like accommodations like extra time, assistive technology, or even teachers. Our teachers are also not trained, so they lack understanding of how to support as much as the law or the policy is talking about inclusive education. So even the assessment, the very rigid assessment methods. So for instance, here in our country, for the students who are doing the international, who are following the international curriculum, we also have had a lot of curriculum overhaul in our education system, and we always push for something we call access arrangement during assessments. These are tests and examinations. So once a psychometric assessment is done and we have a report, so the examiners or the qualifying body or the examining body is able to accord special provisions for neurodivergent learners. So this comes either in form of extra time or a reader for learners who are struggling, whose reading is not efficient or fluent enough. They can get a reader, somebody who will aid them with reading. They can get a scribe. This is somebody who supports them with writing the exams. But the caveat here is that that kind of support should not compromise the integrity of the assessment. So we still have the fact that there's somebody writing answers for them. You can't write. If the child gives you a wrong answer, that is what you're supposed to write. If they give you a right answer, that's what you're supposed to write. But what do those kind of support? What does that kind of support do? It helps level the playing ground so that the children do not suffer undue disadvantage because they have some limitations that are coming due to their learning differences. So we know that when it comes to the policy and the lived experience, that is, there's a lot of limitations when it comes to access and success for neurodivergent students. And that's the context. And I believe I'm speaking on behalf of what is happening across Africa, not just in my country. So the other educational context that we are looking at is the potential of rights-based frameworks. And so we are saying, analysis suggests that we need to reframe education rights so that we explicitly include neurodiversity, and rather than congenital disability categories. So why am I saying that? Is that, first of all, as I had said, most of the neurodiversity is more or less hidden. It's what we call invisible challenge. And so you will find that I don't know whether that's the situation in most of our countries, the countries represented here, but from where I come from, the sorry, I was plugging in my laptop, which was going off. Yes, so in my context, my country, you will find that the challenges, let me call them that, or the differences that have been addressed for the longest are what we call the traditional challenges. So the physical ones, those that can be seen, and we have institutions, we have support for these kind of students. Even when it comes to employment, we have the quota that is allocated to persons with the differences. And you'll find that since these are the areas that were given attention a long time, so you will find that they have resources, they have infrastructure, and they are educated, and therefore they are able to compete for employment, just like the typical people. But for the neurodivergent people, because this is like a new concept that we are still trying to push and advocate for, most of them are still being left out, even in the employment quota. Rarely will you find maybe most of them featuring prominently. The same to the school. So, and that's why we are saying, when it comes now to advocating or reframing the education rights, we have to be very, very explicit when it comes to neurodiversity, so that we don't get we don't get swallowed among the other challenges or differences that are visible. So it is very, very important. And this is key if you are to get equitable access and meaningful participation, especially in schools. Because I believe once we empower neurodivergent children with the right education, they become empowered adults, and therefore even accessing employment and living more successful lives when they are adults becomes a reality. Next, David. Yes, so the other aspect we'll be looking at is the classroom practices and teacher preparation. And I know this is also a big challenge. And so we are talking about teacher training gaps. And so many educators across the African context are not adequately trained to support neurodivergent learners. And so what I had already spoken about this, so it leads to a lot of misinterpretation of behaviors. And I think this is, I will not belabor on this because I had already addressed this. And therefore, it is important that even as we do advocacy, as we are raising awareness, we are also pushing for schools in the sphere, the spaces that we will find ourselves in. This is one area that we really, really need to put a lot of effort. And I know it's also an area that Africa Dyslexia Organization has performed so well, empowering schools, building capacity for schools so that our trainers, or rather our educators, can have the capacity to be able to support, and not just support, maybe even identify and flag a neurodivergent learner, either for assessment and then recommendations for the right support. Very, very important. But we know in our African education context, as far as neurodiversity is concerned, this is a huge gap and we are still playing catch up. So the other aspect is early childhood barriers. And so this has quite a number of overlapping challenges. I know as Africans, we are coming from environments where we have multilingual environment. A child maybe, like in my context, in our country, we have what we call the mother tongue. And that's the first language a child will learn before they go to school. Then when they get to school, they're expected to learn what we call the national language, or the official language, which is the English language. And we also have an extra one that we call Kiswahili. So when, and again, it also depends, because if the father and mother come from two different communities, the child may be exposed again to two languages when they are growing up. So that multilingual environment may be a challenge. We have socioeconomic stress. We have limited professional development for our teachers, and therefore this complicates the early identification. And we know when we talk about neurodiversity, the challenges that come with neurodiversity, like dyslexia, autism, we say early identification is very key for early intervention, because the more we delay interventions, the more we limit the success rate of these children thriving in school, and consequently also thriving as adults. And so the other context is that it's important that we create platforms like workshops or professional development platforms that will aim to equip the teachers so that we are able to address the teacher training gaps that we are talking about. For in our country, we are still trying to advocate for inclusion of neurodiversity as a learning unit in teacher training. And this is what we call when they are training, so that it is not something that they are being exposed to when they are already in practice, and also that exposure is not systematic. It depends on the goodwill of the management of the school to see whether they need to equip the teachers with this knowledge. So, but if that is embedded in the teacher training curriculum, the teachers will graduate, or they will come out of their training and they will be joining practice when they have this information. So that's also an area of advocacy that we need to take note of. Next, David. Yeah, so I just thought maybe it's important that we just have some insights, because we keep talking about inclusion. How does inclusion looks like? And if you're not including, then what are we doing? Because if you're not including, then we are either excluding, or we are segregating, or we are integrating. So I have these 4 models that I thought it is important that we look at, because remember, at the back of our mind, let's remember that this program, this fellowship program, is an advocacy program. You are being trained, your capacity is being built to be advocates. So you need to understand what you're advocating for. And in the space of dyslexia and neurodiversity, there's a lot of advocacy work. So as you're advocating for the right things, then you also have to advocate for the wrong things to be eliminated. So, and one of the things that we, of course, are always fighting against as advocates is exclusion. And so let's look at these 4 models in the context of a school. Allow me, I'm an educator, but this applies either to the workplace, maybe, and also to church, and maybe in other spheres of the society. But for the purpose of this session, allow me to look at it in the context of education or a school. So in the first model, we have exclusion. So what does exclusion look like? So exclusion looks like that first figure you see there. So you can see we have the circles that are colored. And so we have the blue circles, and these blue circles represent typically developing children. So typically developing children are what society has already constructed as maybe normal performing children. So if you look at that circle, they are in a class. Then the other colored circles are atypically developing children, or maybe the neurodivergent. I don't know what in your context, how you call them. They could be children with special educational needs or learning differences. So you can see that they are outside the circle. So probably maybe there's a classroom for the typically developing ones, and none of the neurodivergent children are there. They have been excluded. So they could be, they are separate. They are separate, and they are not part of what is happening within the mainstream class. Very, very unfortunate. Then again, we move to the next one, which is the integration. So the integration, maybe we could see it's a bit fairer compared to exclusion, because unlike the exclusion where the children, the atypically developing children or neurodivergent children are outside that class, these ones are within the class. But what is happening is that they have been placed in a corner. They've all been put together. So they've been put in their own corner within the same class, but they are separate from the rest. So as much as we don't have a physical barrier like we have in the exclusion, because in the inclusion there's a physical barrier. They are not together. But in the integration, we have integrated them. So they are within our class, but maybe put on a table in a corner where they are receiving instructions separately from the rest. So maybe with the aid of an assistant teacher or a support teacher, but you can see that as much as maybe already there's some effort that has been made to bring them together, it is still not meaningful inclusion, because there's still some level of exclusion or segregation. So then the next one is segregation, which is more or less like exclusion, because again, you can see they are far apart with a physical barrier. So the typically developing children are in their own class, and the neurodivergent ones are in their own class. That is very, very common here in our country, and because like now the small circle with the colored small circles, you find we call it special units, where the children are learning differently. They have their teachers, they have their learning, they have their separate timetable. They don't even meet during sports, and so you can see again the segregation. Then finally, our best practice model is the inclusion model, and you can see that all learners are in the same class, and they have been mixed. So they have been they probably even being paired, what we call peer learning. And so this is the best practice. This is what we always fight for, because the other three models are the ones that promote stigma, they are the ones that promote segregation, they are the ones that promote exclusion, and they are the ones that make or create the perceptions and the narrative that these ones are different, these ones are less, and therefore they cannot mix with the rest. So my appeal to you is that as we are advocating, looking at these 4 models, then at least we know when you're talking about inclusion, what inclusion means. Next, David. Yes, so still in the line of inclusive education, so because we've seen the most ideal model that we should go for, the 4th model, the last model on inclusion. So again, it's not just inclusion in theory, it has to be inclusion in practice. So how do we ensure that inclusive education becomes a reality and a practical strategy or practice in our classes? So that can only happen when all stakeholders, from the policy policy makers who are involved in planning for education, to the school management, to the teachers, to the parents, all of us, we have what we say planning for all. And when you're planning for all, we, at the back of our mind, we know that it is not one size fits all. Let's take note of that. It is not a one size fits all. And therefore, you've got to look at all the differences that you have in the class, the different learners that we have in a class. And as you're planning, and it's not just the lesson planning here, I'm also talking about even infrastructural planning. We are talking about planning for resources. We are talking about planning for capacity building, and not just for teachers, but the entire school ecosystem, so that everybody has capacity to support these learners, because learning does not only happen in the classroom. Well, learning also happens outside in the field. It happens in the school transport. Is the school transport inclusive? Our playing fields or playing grounds inclusive? Is the curriculum inclusive? Are the resources that we are using to teach the learners inclusive? So that is why we are saying the planning has to be, we are looking at it holistically, universally, so that at the end of the day, we come up with what we call universal design for learning, okay? UDL. That's another, so please take note of that. And I would want you as part of your further research to look at universal design for learning. And you'll see how approach, because it's an approach, how it advocates for learning for every child, regardless of any difference that they may have. So when you're looking at inclusive education, so I want us to think of it as a party at your house. So how do you decide what food to prepare? And at this juncture, David, please allow me to be a bit participatory with our learners and just get maybe 3 volunteers to tell us if they are thinking of a party in their house, what food they will decide to prepare. How they will decide what food to prepare. What will they put into consideration? David, are we together?
So David is not active
Okay.
at the moment, so I'm here.
Okay, so please raise up your hand. I think I should be able to see it. At least let's get 3 people to tell us if they are thinking of a party at their house. How will you decide what food to prepare? Because this is a very important analogy to help us what to plan for, what considerations to make in a classroom or in an education context. Yes, Omobola. And Tofumi, you'll be next. Thank you. Omobola, I hope I'm getting the name right. Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, what I will consider to prepare if I'm having a party, I would consider, first of all, the adults, I mean, the old. Definitely, they might not be able to eat meat. I will prepare fish for them. And then there are some, the children, again, I'll consider the children, what they actually prefer to eat. They might like maybe rice. And then there are some categories of people, again, that would like swallow, like amala, or I don't know if you, because I'm from Nigeria, sorry, the Nigerians will understand what I'm saying, like amala, semo, pounded yam. So we'll have to, I'll put all those categories of different people into consideration, because I can't say I'm just going to prepare one particular food, because there's definitely going to be like those that don't eat such, or those that have allergies. So I'll put it into consideration and make different categories of food for the different categories of people on their ages and then allergies and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Very impressive. Tofumi? Tofumi, unmute and please tell us what you'd consider.
Okay, I couldn't unmute before. Yeah, so I really said almost all. So the major consideration is the audience. Who are the people that are going to be at the party? They are the most important thing at first. So they are the ones that will not decide what kind of meal will then be prepared. So the focus firstly is the audience, the guest of the party, and then they will be the one to like consider their preferences, what they like, what they will not like, and then of course she has also mentioned the possibility of allergies, and then that's it.
Okay, great, great. That's very, very important. I can also see on the chat, somebody has said they will consider the number of people that will be available, the list of ingredients, and generality of the food people eat. Then Nameti has said the kind of people coming. Yes. So I think those are very, very impressive considerations. And so it puts into perspective what also happens in our classes, just like Omobola has said, the age. So some are old, some are young people. So some maybe don't take salt, some have allergies, some have also medical conditions, some could be diabetic, some could also be vegetarians. So you can see the diversity among the guests that you could be expecting. And that's exactly what happens in our class, that when, or in our schools, that these children are not coming as a homogeneous group, that they are not all the same. And it's not even neurodiversity that is the only consideration. So even the socioeconomic backgrounds that these children are coming from, the language levels that these children are coming with. So we talk of the entry behavior of the children. So those are very, very important things that we need. But now in the context of inclusive education, then we have to put into consideration that children are coming with neurological differences or variations, and therefore they will not learn the same, they will not think the same, they will not reason the same. And so how do we accommodate every child so that they can thrive? So I just thought that maybe that picture of a house party help us to put into perspective what happens in our schools, what happens in our classes, and then how do we make sure that everybody is seen, everybody is appreciated in the way they learn, everybody is supported, everybody is included, to ensure that we have success for every learner, regardless of abilities or differences. Next. Next slide. Yes, and so by so doing, how do we make inclusive education a reality? Just like those guests that we're expecting in our houses, to ensure that every guest will enjoy the party, will feel that you had them in mind, you thought about them, and they all will go home satisfied. So the same case should be replicated in our classes. And therefore, our focus, of course, in the context of neurodiversity, is that inclusive education for neurodiverse learners should involve flexible curriculum and instructions. So we have to adapt the teaching styles, knowing that these children come with different learning styles. And we know about learning styles. We have learners who are visual learners. We have learners who are auditory learners. We have learners who are kinesthetic learners. We have learners who have to so you have to incorporate all those senses, and we call it multisensory, a multisensorial approach to teaching. That is what works for neurodivergent children. And of course, I had already alluded to this, that we should not expect that all students are a one-size-fits-all model. And then the other one is teacher and parent collaboration. And so schools cannot work in isolation. Educators cannot work in isolation. So it is important that there's that multidisciplinary collaboration between the teachers, the parents, or even other paraprofessional support staff like the therapists who work with the children. Because when educators work with families and specialists, they are able to tailor support. They understand the strengths of the learners. They address challenges early, and therefore make sure that neurodivergent individuals and their families decisions are also incorporated in the curriculum, in the assessment, and even in support policies, so that it's not just documentation, because sometimes this happens a lot on paper. And those papers just end up gathering dust in the offices, and very little implementation of what has documented taking place. So, but when we involve the families, they also become accountability partners for educators, for specialists, because you plan together, you plan the goals together, and everybody has a role to play to ensure that those goals are achieved. And that's where IEPs come in, individualized education plan. So they have to be very multidisciplinary when they are being designed, so that when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, the reviews, the entire team is involved, and they are able to check each other and hold each other to accountability, and see maybe where are the gaps, who is maybe dropping the ball, and how can we make sure that we are all working collaboratively to achieve the goals. Next, I see our time is moving very fast, so maybe I will try to manage the time. Yeah, so to put all this into perspective, the bottom line is that neurodiversity in Africa is at least now increasingly becoming recognized within the education and social discourse, but meaningful inclusion, especially in our schools and community life, is still in early stages. So as I said, we are still playing catch up, but we cannot afford to give up. With consistency, with being persistent, we will definitely get there. And therefore, progress will depend on how do we champion for policy reforms? How do we champion for teacher preparation? How do we raise more community awareness? How do we make sure that the models that we are using or we are advocating for are grounded on value to value diversity rather than viewing it as a deficit? So that's how I would summarize that. And I believe that if we are very, very consistent, this is something with time we will be able to achieve. So we have to continue amplifying our voices. We have to continue making noises until we achieve what we are looking for. Next. Yeah, so this is our last part of today's training. And we are going to look at trend-driven and overgeneralized language, because again, even as we do our advocacy work, we have to do it with caution, so that the language that we use may not be counterproductive or pose any risk that may hurt our work. And so when you're talking about trend-driven and overgeneralized language, it's useful for visibility, because as we are using language, we are trying to create visibility. We are trying to reinforce awareness. But again, it has to be done with caution, because it can also carry real risk. And one of the risks that we're going to look at today is sometimes the trend-driven or overgeneralized language can cause what we call flattening complexity. What does that mean? Sometimes trendy phrases often simplify nuanced realities. So like they tend to trivialize a reality. So we need to be careful, even as we are advocating for neurodiversity. How does our language what language do we use so that we don't maybe trivialize the reality that comes with some of the things that we are trying to advocate for. So, and also we avoid buzzwords, because sometimes when something is described with the same buzzwords, important differences like the context, the culture, the severity, and the individual differences get erased. So, so for example, when we treat all neurodivergent experiences as the same, and I know sometimes maybe there's a tendency to, of course, amplify the strengths of neurodivergent. Like there's even now a term we are calling, a buzzword we are calling dyslexic thinking, which has been appreciated even by LinkedIn, and it's also now even in our dictionary that neurodivergent people, dyslexic people, can include that in their CV, which is very, very important. And but as we are also amplifying their strengths, let's also bring out the challenges that comes with the neurodiversity, because we know the experiences are not the same. And so when we are talking about the success, let's also talk about the challenges, because that's how we are going to build systems that will address the challenges that will contribute to the strength, more strengths that we are talking about. Next. So again, sometimes it leads to misrepresentation. So let's not overgeneralize, because this can intentionally speak for groups rather than with them, or rather than individuals. So we risk portraying partial truths as universal truths. So the other risk is that it weakens credibility. So, and especially audiences like policymakers, academics, or academia practitioners, if they see it as a trend-heavy language, it may look shallow or performative, therefore reducing trust in the message. So as we champion neurodiversity, let's also look at the nuances that come with it, from the challenges, from the differences of how it manifests or presents among different people, so that we are not again treating it as a homogeneous group, but we know that it can cause real challenges for some people, and especially considering the background that they are coming from, while also it has its own strengths. Next. Another risk is that it may encourage performative inclusion, and this can be counterproductive. So people may adopt the language without changing behavior or system. So inclusion may just be something that we say, but not something that we are doing. So even as we are championing for neurodiversity, let's also champion, but ensure that we are also making sure that we are not just saying it, but we are practicing it. The other risk is that it obscures structural issues. So if we have trendy terms that focus on individuals, while it hides the systemic barriers, then it becomes a problem. And I think I had said that. Then the other risk is that it silences minority or local voices. So global trends can drown out indigenous, local, or cultural specific ways of naming experiences. So yes, as much as we have a global trend or a universal trend, but how does it manifest now when we now become granular, like indigenously, locally, culturally? What are the nuances? What are the differences? And what are the experiences like, so that we are saying it as it is? So if it's Kenya, how is the experience in Kenya for a neurodivergent person? If it is Ghana, how is it? If it's another country, how is it? Then so that we don't just come up with global solutions or universal solutions that are not context-based and may not help address the individual experiences based on where they are coming from. So the other risk is that it may create policy and practice mismatches. And so any language that is vague or overgeneralized may result to poorly designed interventions. or misaligned interventions and becomes ineffective on the ground. So that's why we are saying we cannot afford to be vague. We have to be as granular as we can. And that's why, and I think there's a slide that we may have skipped that looked at the different, when it comes to neurodiversity, what conditions fall under the neurodiversity category. And so we have dyslexia, we have autism, we have Tourette syndrome, we have dyspraxia, we have dysgraphia. I had that slide. And it's important to know that all those conditions are very different. So they present very, very differently. And therefore, we have to be very, very intentional and granular when we are demystifying or unpacking neurodiversity. And then trendy language or overgeneralized language ages badly. So because trends shift quickly, language is not, and if the language is not grounded in evidence or context, so it may become outdated, it may bring confusion, and it even bring more harm over time. That is why we have to be very, very careful. Next slide. Yeah, so I think this slide, and I believe the participants, you're going to share. So it just summarizes what we have just said in a tabular form. Maybe it makes it easier for you to understand, but it also helps us compare trend-driven and overgeneralized language, and of course the risks created, and maybe using a language that is grounded and that is also context aware. So that's the alternative to the trend driven. So how does it look like? So maybe that is something you could, you will review once you get the presentation. Next, I'm looking at time. Our time is much spent. Yes, great. So this brings us to the end of our presentation. And so I welcome the Q&A session. And I think I'm able to see people's hands, but if I'm not, and David, you're still around, you can kindly also help me with this session, moderate this session. So any questions?
Does anyone have a question? If you do, please put up the raise hand, and then we will call you to ask a question, or you can also put in the chat. It could also be a comment if you have. So please go ahead. Let us hear from you. Okay, we have Sunny who would like to ask a question. Go ahead.
All right, good evening once again. Much for the presentation. So my question is, I want to understand the aspect of language use and the misconception. So how, what are the right words to use in trying to like advocate? How do we express the word and avoid some trendy words? Like I'm looking forward to like a proper example. For instance, if you can use an instances of when someone is advocating and then trying to speak to the community. Okay, this is neurodiversity. This is how people learn. Learning differences. So how do we go about while advocating and at the same time avoiding those misconceptions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sunny. I'm sorry, I think there was echo as you were asking the question on my end, but if I've gotten you correctly, I think it's about language and the right language to use. So I think that's a very, very important question. And when we are advocating in this space, language is very important, because we actually talk of inclusive language, that our language should be inclusive language, our language should be dignifying, and our language should not perpetuate or perpetrate the things that we are trying to fight. And so when it comes to language, I know this is a whole area, because again, so first of all, we always advise that it's important that we allow the people who are concerned to tell us how they prefer to be called. For instance, I know for the longest, we have called people with visual impairment, people who are visually challenged. But you will find that they say we prefer to just call us the blind, call us, if it's those with hearing impairment, call us the deaf. But we of course have that tendency to be politically correct, to try and use euphemism to maybe not look like we are hurting them. But they have a way they prefer to be called. And so when it comes to also neurodiversity, for instance, we are encouraged to appreciate the individual first, then the condition. So for instance, they'll say it's important that we say people living with autism, or a person living with autism, or instead of autistic. So we still do not, maybe there are still areas of language that are still maybe in contention, or we don't have maybe universally agreed upon. But again, the most important thing is the language that we are using. Is it dignifying? That's the most important thing. So there are those that will prefer to be called neurodivergent. There are those that will prefer to be called dyslexic. And so in most cases, and especially with adults, I have seen people ask, well, how would you prefer to be addressed? And the people will tell you. But again, I think for me, the bottom line is that we know their language that is used to refer to people who are different, that is quite indignifying, and that is what we need to avoid at all costs. I don't know that I've answered your question properly. And Ms. Rosa, you also free to contribute to that.
Comments, contributions. Is there anything else? Let me check in the chat if we have something here. Okay. Okay, no, we don't. We do not have a comment here. Any other person? We have 5 seconds to put up our hands. If we're not, then we will go straight and start to wrap up for the weekend. But this training has been amazing. I have learned a lot, and I hope you have also learned something that is going to help you to become the best active dyslexia advocates in your respective country, and be proud to stand in front of people to raise awareness. Even though, yes, it says dyslexia advocates, the reason why we don't just come here and do only things relating to dyslexia is because we want you all to be informed as to what the whole broader scope of the learning differences are. And today you went through what neurodiversity is. And what I really like about what Esther did was how she linked the African cultural, social, and educational context that is lingering around, because it's important. There are a lot of trainings on neurodiversity on the internet. You can source it many places. But what we lack when it comes to our continent is trainings that speaks to our realities. And I'm glad Esther went that route of not just a generalized neurodiversity training, but really kind of link it back to what the reality is. I love the concept of the food she gave. It's sitting well because yes, if you're going to cook, you think about everybody, how they will enjoy it and give you good comments. You could think about your husband if you are married, your children, and you make sure everybody gets what they want. So why is it that when it comes to supporting neurodivergence, we want to put everybody in the same box? It doesn't work that way. You can hear my accent versus Esther's accent. Esther is in Kenya. I'm in Ghana. I heard my Nigerian people speak totally three different accents. And if we should unmute for all of you to speak, we will hear different accents across board. So that tells you that we are all neurodiverse. We are divergent people. And we wish our education systems can understand that these children we're dealing with are not the same. And we need approach that works for everybody. And not just education, also families. As in, when you have children, 2, 3, sometimes our parents, I think they forget about themselves, but they feel like, oh, the approach I used to raise my first child is the same approach I'm supposed to use for my second child. But these guys are coming with different attributes and interests and perspective, and we forget about that. So I really love the examples you gave, Esther. This is it's really hit home. It's the realist, So you guys, if you're here and you want a generalized like neurodiversity to watch, go on the Africa Dyslexia Organization YouTube. Last week we did Understanding Neurodiversity, which was done by Nate, and you can listen to that and also come back to this, and you see how the one that is hitting home is actually your reality, the reality you are going to face on the ground. So thank you so much, Esther. We have comments here. It says, well done, Mom. Considering that Africa is at the early stage of embracing neurodiversity, what strategies do we employ to get people who are neurodivergent, quote unquote, dyslexics, to begin to come out so that stigmatization can be eradicated? I give a clap for this question. What strategies should we deploy or employ for people who are neurodivergent to be able to come out, or dyslexic, to be able to come out of their shells and stop hiding and voice out that I am a dyslexic, I have ADHD, I have dyslexia, I have dyspraxia? What strategies do we need to put? Because the stigma is really high, Esther, and you know it. Some parents, when they see their child, you even finish the assessment done and you confirm their child is dyslexic, it's like, I don't want this label on my child. So what do we do? That's the question for you. Then we come to the question. Thank you.
Great. That's a very, very brilliant question. And I think it also speaks to our work as advocates. And it will go a long way in just helping to demystify and also to portray in positive focus of what being neurodivergent is. And I think that's a very timely question, because you see, when we look at the Western countries, a lot of dyslexics, successful dyslexics, well-established, famous dyslexics, have been coming out in their numbers. The likes of Richard Branson, for those of you maybe who know the organization called Made by Dyslexia, it's a UK organization. It's actually a charity organization that has been formed by dyslexic people who are successful, and they're out to talk about their dyslexia without shame. And actually, they say they contribute their success to to dyslexia. And so that is also now the same thing that we envision to see in Africa. And so the question is, how do we make that happen? How do we make that a reality? And I think we have a perfect example here in our midst, Rosa, who is already a champion, who has talked about her story and who has inspired, and not only other dyslexics like her, but even professionals like us, children, families. And so I think, I believe even in Western countries where we have more and more people who have come out, it starts with one person. Then that one person causes ripples. There are small ripples. Another one say, oh, Kumbe, I can also talk about it. And I want to give an example also. Based, I can say Rosalind has really inspired our work in Kenya. And she's actually the reason that we successfully held the conference that you had David read in my profile, because we as we were trying to start, we were not sure whether to go for it or not. But when Rosalind came on board, she kind of now just spurred us, and we knew there was no stopping. And as a result of that, we have one successful dyslexic Kenyan called Tony Ndogo. And when he learned about the conference and we reached out, he also came out and he also became a voice and he became a champion. Then after that conference, we have a radio broadcaster, a media personality, who also reached out to us after the conference. If you go to our socials, Bloom Dyslexia Center, he's already done a video, and he actually did not know that he knew he had struggles in school, but he didn't have a name for it. But our conference and the work that the likes of Rosalind, African champions, are doing, this gentleman was able to come out. So I think the more advocacy work we do, the more platforms we create to give people a safe space to come out, the more people with dyslexia who are neurodivergent will come out. So I believe, and actually even through our social medias, we've gotten a lot of DMs of people, personalities, public people we never knew, and now they're telling us we can now identify with what you're saying. Now we know what it is, and how do we reach out, how do we support you? And so I believe that even if we are going to make baby steps, the more awareness we raise, the more we'll have more people coming out and of course helping us in this journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. This is great. The next one that is in is a comment which is almost speaking to the same thing. Bridget says, learning a lot of new things. Yay! This is really important. We always think that everyone is the same and we can handle each person the same. Thank you for the light opening. So, Miss Esther, our aspiring advocates have so keen things today, and I'm sure it's sitting in the right heads and in the right hearts, and they are going to utilize it and make you proud and also us proud. We love that you took time from your busy schedule, and it's almost I think you are 3 hours ahead of Accra. So right now I'm thinking it's almost like 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. you're in, but you're here
9
and imparting us. And ladies and gentlemen, please let's put in the comment, thank you for Miss Esther for her wonderful presentation. And we look forward engaging her more and more. She's my sister and we're working together. And so definitely, those of you who are in Kenya, you'll get to know more of her. I want to say a big thank you to you all as well for making the time to be here. I told you guys yesterday that by the time we finish yesterday, some people will drop off. And I tell you, it is okay. Even if it gets to only 3, 2, and even 1 person, we will make sure we give everything that it's in our capability for the person to succeed and succeed well. It's not about numbers, it's about quality. If you were here in the previous cohort, you would have seen that on this screen you are like 150 people. But I'm kind of liking this intimate relationship we are building. I'm already starting to learn your names. It's just because of how unique this cohort, we decided to do just 22 people of you so that we can get to know you, we can address your issues, and we can really have time for you. So thank you for sticking around yesterday and today and committing your 4 hours for these 2 days. All the resources will be shared. We have the recordings for you. We'll give you the slide from yesterday and today. And please don't just go and close it. Always refer, make your notes, because this same content are some of the content you are going to repurpose to engage on the ground. So we are not meeting next week. Is everybody happy? We are not meeting next week. There isn't any training next week. However, we will be signing you up. We want to sign you up after you have finished the first dyslexia course. We'll sign you on an understanding dyslexia so that you can get your certificate from NESI as well. But next week, next 2 weeks, which is the 19th and 20th, you are covering Model 3 and Model 4. Model 3 is Dyslexia Foundation for Advocates, and this will be delivered by Ms. Fatih Sadiq. And then on Friday the 20th, you are going to do Stigma, Culture, and Narrative Change with Miss Barbara Brew. They are all pumped up to come and engage with you. I say a big thank you to the ADO team, which is David and Seth, who are working in the background, and Susan, who has just stepped off to head out. We thank them for all they are doing, and for all our trainers like Miss Esther. I can't thank you enough. Thank you. God bless you for the energy, and replenish your energy, your investments that you have put in it to enrich us. We are so grateful. So we wish you all a happy weekend. If you need anything, don't feel lost. Reach out to David, your advocate coordinator, or reach out to Seth, and they will be able to support you in the best possible way. If you wait 3 days and you haven't heard from them, reach out to me and I'll go and have a conversation with them. Thank you all. Have a good evening. Or Miss Esther, do you have one last thing to say before we leave?
Yeah, maybe my parting shot is first to appreciate the amazing audience that I've had this evening. It's been a pleasure, and I pray that all that we are learning is going to be very, very impactful. So just to wish you the very best in the remaining sessions of the entire program. I'm sure we'll still engage before the program is over, but I pray that go out there, and you don't have to wait for the program to end. By module 3 or 4, you should already be raring to go to start the advocacy work. So thank you very much, and I pray that it will end well, because all that starts well, I hear it was a good start, definitely ends well. Thank you, and good night. Thank you.
Thank you as well. David, you can take over. We're done, and you can let them know the passphrase and whatever you left with. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you all for staying together for today's session. And Madam Esther, thank you very much for handling today's session. We are really educated. And in fact, I love it. And in your WhatsApp group, you're going to see the link to the feedback and also the link to the recorded version of the training. So you can look at it at every point in time. All right. And feel free to visit the training, to look at it over and over, just to make your notes again, and also to learn from it again. Today's passphrase is teach differently. All right. Teach differently. That is today's passphrase. Teach differently. It is posted in the chat room. So do well to look at it and then type it in for your passphrase. All right. And so without any other further questions, and without any anything you would want to sign out for today. And please again, I repeat, do well to take the survey, all right, because that forms part of your attendance. It is very, very important. All right, so thank you very much. And next week, as Lady Weza said, there is no training for next week. So from next week, from Monday through to Friday, my number is active. You can contact me if you need any help, all right, and I'm willing to help you along the line. So on that note, we want to say thank you for your time. It's exactly 6 o'clock and we are ending today's session. I want to say thank you for your time and God richly bless you all. You can now mute yourself and then cheers to everyone. Let's cheers to ourselves and then we sign out nicely. All right. I love to hear from all of you next 2 weeks. Yes, on the 19th and the 20th of February. All right. See you soon
Thank you.
then.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very
Thank you
much.
for the
Bye-bye.
session.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good
Achieve the
evening.
love.
Bye.
Thank you. Yeah,
Bye.
bye. Thank you. See you guys
Bye.
next week.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you so much for today's class. Bye.
Thank you very much as well. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for today's training. It was
Thank
really,
you,
yes, we
Omobala.
achieved a lot.
Omobola, yeah.
Yeah, that's my name. I'm a Bola. Yeah, thank you.
Omobola, right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
All right.
I got it
Thank
right.
you.
I got it
Bye.
right.
Have a nice week
Bye.
ahead. All right.
Same as
Bye.
you.
Happy weekend.
Right. Okay, lovely people. We sign out now. Bye.
Okay.